Hey nerds, welcome to the Nerd Rundown presents Top Gun Maverick. Today we're going to be reviewing the sequel to the 1986 classic, which I know we are thrilled to review. I will be your host for this episode, Morgan, aka Big Morg 3000 Santo, and with me today are some of the biggest nerds I know, including Darren Stemple.
Woo! Colorado Avalanche, Stanley Cup champions. Thank you very much.
Also, we have Eric Hare.
Yeehaw, Jester's dead.
Perfect. And we have the one and only Megan Bradbury.
With my signature intro.
Finger guns. Shoot out. Now, we are going to be reviewing Top Gun Maverick, which I'm pretty sure everybody in this room, our rooms are wherever we're at, thoroughly loved. I am excited to get right into it, so I'm not going to stall any longer, but let's get right into it. Quick reactions. Darren, I am going to you first. What did you think when you walked out of that theater? How did you feel? What were you thinking?
Bro, I was buzzing. I was literally, I had like a tingling feeling throughout my body from the moment I stood up in my chair to the moment I sat down in my truck. Like, and it wasn't, you stay there to watch the end credits, or not the end credits, but what they did with the actors and their names, like in 1986. So then you get up, hang out, or not necessarily hang out, but you're with friends, you're talking to them about the movie. It's a good 10 minutes at least from chair to chair, and that whole time I was tingling because I haven't seen a movie that good in a long time, and I have such love for the first one, and the way that they paid so much love and homage really to the first one was great. I just, that third act, I saw it twice, and that third act is even better the second time. It's when Jon Hamm, probably my favorite part of the whole movie, when Jon Hamm's standing there and the planes are going under the water, and it's like almost no point of no return, and Jon Hamm says, "Send him." That was like, you felt like a man watching that. That was like the manliest.
Meg, did you feel like a man watching that scene? Did you?
I did, honestly. Yeah, I did.
How can you not? Like, yeah, that was.
Not.
I felt it in my pants in that one. So that was awesome. We'll get into all the nitty gritty details, but everybody I've talked to has come out of the movie just being mind blown how good it was, and I'm so happy that they did not screw this up.
Yes,
and went the other way.
Yes, Megan. So I know you said you felt like a man at that scene. Were you as excited as Darren was when he walked out of that film? Did you have the chills?
Even though I really, really, really did enjoy the movie, it pales in comparison, to STEM. However, I think I honestly enjoyed this one more than the first one. But I loved the callbacks that they gave, to the original. I thought they did that very well, both, in the way it was shot, in the dialogue, in the music, all of it. But this definitely, I think, far surpassed the original for me. But I had only just seen the original in full, start to finish, the month before last or whatever. And then I rewatched it again with you guys. And that kind of gave me the deeper appreciation for it. So I was glad that I had done that so recently. before going to the theater. But this was like, and it was nice too, because my husband and I had a nice date night. We didn't have to worry about the kids, and so it made it that much more enjoyable. And on the big screen, now we didn't do IMAX. I kind of wish we had, because I think that would have been super impressive. But yeah, it was great. I mean, it really was.
Yeah. No, Eric. So far, it sounds like I don't know if anyone's topping. It doesn't sound like anyone's topping Stump's feelings. So, how are you, Eric?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily. Yeah, I loved it. I'll just say my very, very quick reaction to it coming out of the theater. I loved it. I thought it was great. I was so grateful and so thankful to Tom Cruise and Kaczynski and the whole Bruckheimer and Paramount Pictures itself for pushing the release back. I know that was very controversial.
Yeah.
I know people had a lot of problems with that, but having watched it on the big screen, it would have been a mistake to release that movie on streaming on the smaller screens. You even said it, Meg, right there. You wish you'd seen it on a bigger screen. I went and saw it on the biggest screen I could find, which was the gigantic IMAX screen, and I still was like, is there a bigger screen I can see this on? Because it just was so it was just so cool, to see that in there. I loved, Tom Cruise was great. The supporting cast was awesome. The visual effects were ridiculously cool, and the fact that they put those actors and actresses inside the cockpit of real F-18s was just really great. They, like Meg said, the nostalgia stuff that they did, the callbacks, the throwbacks, the respect that they paid to the first film in a couple of different places was really, really tremendous, and I'll dive into those a little bit deeper as we kind of go into the review. But walking out of that theater, I was like, man, this is awesome, and I've seen it twice already. I'm probably going to go see it again, before it leaves the theater. I'll probably go see it at least one more time, because it's that much fun to watch, and it just crossed like $1 billion, I think, over this weekend. Yeah. So
today,
apparently, I'm not in. I'm in good company, because I think everybody else, and I haven't heard anybody say that they didn't like it. I haven't heard anybody, and that includes, I listen to a lot of guys who are former naval aviators or current naval aviators, and they've watched it and they've all been like, it's awesome. Like they did a great job. So, yeah. Morg, how about you?
I agree with everybody here. I wasn't quite on the Darren level. I think it's hard to get to that level, but I was pumped from
get on my level.
I gotta get on that from beginning to end. Loved it nonstop. There wasn't a single moment that I was just like, I wish I wasn't sitting here watching this movie. I did get to see it in IMAX, which definitely helps. I mean, that just the sounds, like I'm sitting there watching. I'm looking for bogeys. I'm like, because I'm hearing them flying by me. I'm like,
you're 6, Morgan.
I know. I'm like, where is it? I loved it from beginning to end. And I'll say this review is a spoiler review for people that have not seen it. I don't watch this review. Go watch the movie instead.
For sure.
Come watch it.
Yeah.
But I loved it, and and one of my favorite scenes just in it, quick before we start really getting into it, is that hug between Maverick and Rooster, which was that hug he should have had with Goose. And you could see it in Maverick's eyes, like the way Tom Cruise did that, like you knew it. It just everything about it. Loved it. Was excited immediately. I saw it alone because my wife did not care to see it at all. I just went alone, watched it, called her immediately, and I was like, you missed out on a movie. I was like, you really missed out. So yes, overall, fantastic. And like you said, we're not alone in this. So I hit $1 billion today.
Yeah.
And it's going to keep going, especially if they do some sort of re-release or something, which seems to be the popular thing to do now.
Yeah,
Morbius got a re-release. This better get a re-release. So with that, let's get into the story. So I would say, Eric, tell us a little bit. Let's start. What is the story? Why is Maverick back?
Well, Okay, so we'll talk about the story, and I thought it was really great how they started the movie off almost identical to the original movie. You know, they went out on an active duty aircraft carrier and they just filmed all the people and equipment that make up an aircraft carrier, and you get to watch how much goes on an aircraft carrier to get those planes off the pointy end of the boat and to recover them off the back end of the boat. And I think it's just awesome that they filmed it identical to the way Tony Scott films that stuff. You know, they used that golden hour light. You know, so to me, that was a great hat tip. They started out the movie with talking about Top Gun and why Top Gun exists. You know, that we were losing pilots like crazy in the Vietnam War coming out of Korea. We had switched from being a guns specific platforms. You know, all the aircraft that we had were only built with guns. And so people really had to learn how to dogfight if they were going to survive. And when we moved to Vietnam, we had moved to aircraft that only shot missiles. They didn't even have guns in them, in some of them. And so they lost the skill of dogfighting because they were relying on the radars and they were relying on that to shoot down the aircraft, and they weren't doing the job. And so these guys were getting mixed up, and we were losing people. You know, we were losing pilots, we were losing equipment. And the Navy was like, hey, we need to figure out how to teach these guys. And, you know, at the time it was just guys, you know, we need to teach these guys how to dogfight so that they come back from these missions and that they stay alive. And so they built the school in 1969. I love that they kept that plaque, that title card there. I love that they, you know, and then they went straight into the Tony Scott hat tip, you know, where it's like, hey, we're going to film in this golden hour. We're going to show you what it's really like to have these young men and women out there. And we're talking kids that are 18, 19 years old who are responsible for $1 million, tens of millions of dollars. They're responsible for hooking up those jets to the catapults. They're responsible for making sure that the weapons are you know, attached to those aircraft, and they're responsible for recovering those aircraft. So, and it's loud, it's violent, and it is badass, you know, and to see that coming off the front end of the boat, you know, they light those afterburners and go off the front end of the boat. That is pretty daggone cool. And it's just as cool to watch them go from a 0 to 140 miles an hour in like 2 seconds. And it's just as cool to watch them go from 140 to 0 in like a second and a half, you know. I mean, if you think about it, you're literally flying a jet with a tiny hook on the back, and you're trying to catch one of 4 wires that's stretched across the back of that thing. And and you're doing it during the daytime. Try doing it at night, like, you know, or in bad weather. And it's just, you have to like, you just have to, that is the story of Top Gun, is like all these like kids who are doing these jobs, because they're really kids. When I look back at it, like even the pilots are in their 20s and 30s, you know, like they're all young people doing these jobs. And it's just, you have to just give it to them. So the first part of the story, the first act of the story is, or at least the first opening scene is just that. But then we go into why is Maverick where he is, you know, because Maverick has never stopped being Maverick, which is, he's never stopped doing, you know, the don't think, just, you know, fly type thing. And it's cost him a lot. You know, he's a 40-some-year-old, you know, 50-some-year-old captain. Yeah, you know, he should be an admiral, and he's not. You know, he's kept, because of his, you know, doing stuff the way Maverick does it. It's kept him, you know, from moving on. So now he's a test pilot, you know, and he's flying his stuff, but he's never stopped being who he is. You know, we get in that first scene, that first act where he's talking about, you know, if this project gets killed, I know what happens to me if I do what I'm going to do, which is be Maverick. I know what's going to happen to me, and I'm okay with that. But I know that if I don't take this flight, I know what happens to the rest of you guys who all are depending on this job and for your livelihoods, for your, you know, for your life. And that's Maverick, you know. I mean, the dude has always just cared about other people, and been one of those guys that kind of does his own thing. So that's the kind of the opening act to Top Gun Maverick, is we get to see why he is where he's at still. You know, I have to say the scene, you know, after the test pilot scene where he walks into the cafe, you know, it was so great. You know, it was so great. He walks into that, you know, and everybody's just staring at him, and he grabs that water and he drinks it down. And the kid's response is just classic,
Oh,
you know.
perfect.
He's
It
like,
was so good.
where am I? You know, Earth. You know? That's so great, so great.
Yeah, when you think about it, he was just doing little over 10 G's, so
Right. Yeah.
who knows where he could have ended up as he's doing that flight. And I'll say, sitting in that theater when I saw that opening, I got a little teary eyed because I couldn't experience that first one in theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I had to watch it on TV with my dad, and I didn't get to experience. So seeing that almost shot for shot, music, everything, just remake.
Yeah.
It was just boom. It was just like, wow, like it just hit me. Something about that hit me. I don't know how Darren, Meg, how you felt about that, but like,
it was great.
It was perfect.
Yeah, like I said, the emotion of that scene, almost shot for shot. Like I said, I think that's a great way to do. Like, if you're going to do a sequel, people loved that opening sequence, and they loved that Top Gun song. They loved Danger Zone from Kenny Loggins. Why would you not just put it back in there? You know, and we've seen a lot of nostalgia films come forward. I think we've talked about Ghostbusters Afterlife might be, up to this point, been the best of the remakes from the older movies, or trying to revive something. This, hands down, is the best, that I've seen. So.
Oh, they definitely got it right. So he gets back in there through his reasoning. He does the test pilot. He now gets called up. Or as he puts it, I didn't think I'd be invited back.
Right.
It's not an invitation. These are orders. So, Megan, now in this part of the film, how good is your memory? Do you remember what the point of him actually being there is now? Like, why was he actually in Top Gun again? Because we know he's a Top Gun student. He doesn't teach. We know that. What's going on there?
I mean, he obviously has the skills needed for, the mission that they're trying to accomplish, but I think a lot of it was Iceman pulling some strings, trying to help him out as best he could, as he clearly did. They kind of showed that, that he's been trying to help him out and, get his ass out of trouble a number of times. So I think it, it wasn't just the skill that he possessed, but, the fact that he had somebody up above that could pull those strings to kind of get him in there to help. I don't know. I mean, even though he's got the skills, he's not the best teacher. He's got some good character flaws, that he's got to work on throughout the movie. But I really liked that relationship that he had with Iceman, that they kind of brought back. That was really, really cool how they did that.
Well, that and you get the introduction of Bradley Bradshaw, Rooster, and you have that conflict there. They introduce that conflict between the two of them where you see, Goose, you know how much I love when they do this. Like, as the audience member, how much Goose meant to Maverick, mm-hmm. And so you're like, in your head, it just kills you to see how Rooster doesn't he doesn't have that reference, he doesn't have that knowledge that you have as an audience member, because you're like, oh my God, like that was his like brother, like he loved your dad more than life itself, and so I don't know about you, Meg, and maybe you, Darren. How emotional was the movie for you guys, at least in that first act? Like, how was the emotion there for you? Because for me, it kind of was like a gut punch, like kind of right away when you had like Rooster and him having that conflict. That great revival scene where they do the Great Balls of Fire, and you're like, oh man, that's so great. But then you can see, like, I was really surprised at how emotional that stuff was for me, at least. It sounds like for more you were,
you want him to be like the father that he never had, kind of thing. You want him to be
Right.
able to step into that role because you know the history, and then to see the hatred, that he has towards Maverick. It was a gut punch, because you can kind of put yourself in that position and understand. And then, like you said, the history, how much he cared for Goose, and to not be able to fill that role the way he wants to, and have that relationship with Rooster, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
and correct me if I'm wrong, Darren. It didn't seem like they were beefing over the death of his dad. It seemed like it was more of the fact that Maverick held him back for 4 years or something like that. Because I know there was stuff about the death, but it seemed to be more of that. If I remember correctly, you saw it twice. I only got to see it once.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, the beef was from him holding him back, and he lost 4 years on his military career, which that can be a lot for somebody who wants to be a career person. I was in for 4 years, 3 years, 9 months, 16 days to be exact. So that felt like an eternity. And thinking about where the guys I went in at the same time, being 4 years ahead of me, or by the time I got there, that would be crazy. Crazy. So yeah, that would suck big time. And I think when you have that seep into your emotions, because also another thing is Maverick wanted to be the dad he never got, but he wasn't. And so there was some of that going on too, just that he wasn't probably always there for him, because Mav was either too afraid to take that big step and really be the mentor he needed, like he does at the end. Maybe there's some resentment there too. And so when all of that kind of culminates, and now you're mad at him, and it's very easy to throw a couple jabs about the death of his father, I think we can all relate to something along those lines where you get really emotional and you say some dumb shit. So I've definitely been in that situation before, so I can relate. And when we were doing our watch along, that we couldn't get it uploaded to YouTube.
Which eventually, when we get on Patreon and we can sell that, that'll be an exclusive that you'll get as once we get Patreon set up.
Video.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was talking about how one thing I was really excited to see in Maverick, in Top Gun Maverick, is the resolution to the Goose story, and there was some tail that had to be taken care of from the Goose storyline to make the Rooster storyline work. And it just goes along with why this movie is so good, because everything that they did in this movie worked for me on every single level. Why is Maverick only a captain? Why is he not an admiral right along with Iceman?
Yep.
How are they going to bring Iceman back into the story? Freaking brilliant way of bringing Ice back in, and just I would have never. You could pay me $1 billion, I wouldn't have thought of that. So just brilliant writing, and there's a section here for writing later on, but my hat's off to the people who were able to pay off all of the storylines from the original. The one being that Connelly is now 75 years old and aged herself out of the role. We didn't need a resolution to that storyline.
Right.
As they brought in, maybe the most brilliant callback from the movie, Penny Benjamin, the absolutely gorgeous Jennifer Connelly.
Ageless wonder. Between her and Paul Rudd, they neither one of them ever aged.
That may have been the prettiest she's ever been, and that's saying something. Plus, she drove my favorite Porsche. If I ever had a classic car, that would be the classic car I have. So it was just double whammy for me.
She's doing well as a bar owner.
So and people, normal non-nerd plebes, they don't understand that that's Penny Benjamin from that one scene, that one line. And then when you're like, oh yeah, you remember that scene where they're getting their asses chewed and he's going through his list, and he goes in, and one admiral's daughter, and Goose turns over and he says, Penny Benjamin?
That's right.
that ever is like, oh yeah, that, I mean,
And
how-
you
how
asshole,
much-
you're lucky to be here. You know, like it
Yeah.
just goes just like that.
yeah, and everybody just like instantly knows, okay, that I remember that scene from the movie. And
Yeah.
so it's just a really cool callback. So I know that was more than what you bargained for on your Goose question, Morg, but
No, that was good. No, hey, the more the better. And you know, and the mission in this movie, it almost isn't necessarily the training centered mostly around the dogfighting. It seems like we get dogfighting rather quick as far as that training's concerned, because the whole mission is really about that how they had to do that run where they had to stick a certain level, get up over, pull 10 Gs, and then F-18, which has never been done before, and it's all about really the speed of it. And I think that's where you see a lot of that tension too with Rooster and Tom Cruise, because Rooster is a by the books guy, and Tom's like, no, you can't think when you're doing this. So you know, I thought that was a neat way to kind of change it up a little bit as far as what the actual training was. This essentially was like a suicide mission as far as, you know, I thought Jon Hamm was concerned. It wasn't expecting anyone to get out of this.
The biggest difference in this movie from the 1986 movie is there's a through plot line throughout the whole movie.
Yes.
You know, the first movie, it's you know, you got your first actor, and then they get the Top Gun, and then they get this mission, and they got to go do this mission. That mission is stated almost from the very beginning of the movie, and so we follow that storyline throughout the movie, and that's a big difference. And another thing that worked really well, made the movie maybe an overall better movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And this fight was intentional, essentially. Like they were going in knowing there was going to be a fight in whatever country, you know,
and they
we're
didn't
not allowed.
necessarily know if that was going to happen in the
Right.
first.
Yeah, it did. So I like that you're like, this did follow more of a plot. I agree with that. And then, you know, I'll kind of skip to the third act here, just the way it wraps up. What did we think of the ending? Was it do we think it jumped a little too much there? Like it got a little like,
well,
you know what I mean? Not in a bad way, just a little more like, wow, I wasn't really expecting kind of that.
Well, I want to rewind just for a second, just to get to the second act and talk about, because Darren makes a very good point, and I can kind of give a little bit more information on how that works. And really, you said the same in what you said as well, Mork. So in 1986, the F-14 Tomcat was the
sexiest vehicle of all time.
Well, besides that, it was a fleet defense aircraft. So it only carried air-to-air missiles. When they designed it, you know, a lot of the guys who fly the F-15s, fly the F-14s, they didn't want to pound on that aircraft to be dedicated to dropping bombs. All they wanted to do was go out and fight other fighters and other, you know, bombers and stuff like that. That was the job. And so that's what Top Gun was designed to do, was to teach them to shoot down other aircraft. After the Gulf War, it became pretty apparent that if you couldn't drop bombs, your days were numbered, because the Cold War was over. You weren't going to be shooting down Russian bombers. You weren't going to be shooting down this. So if you couldn't support the guy on the ground, you weren't going to have a job. And so they very quickly changed the Tomcat to being able to drop bombs. But in like 2006, they retired the Tomcat because it was getting too old. It was too expensive to fix. And so they made the decision in the 90s to build the Super Hornet, the F-18, because they had the Super Hornet. The original Hornet came out in the 80s, and then in the 90s, late 90s, they designed the Super Hornet, and they designed it as a strike fighter platform. So not only can it shoot down other airplanes, it can fight its way to a target, drop bombs, and fight its way back out. And that was something that the Tomcat originally wasn't really necessarily designed to do. It could do it, but it wasn't necessarily designed to do that. So that's why you have the mission change, the change in how the training goes. So they go to Top Gun, and they're not just learning how to dogfight other aircraft. Now they have to fight other aircraft, get to a target, drop the bomb, and then get out. And, you know, maybe you have to fight your way out as well. So there's a lot more that goes into, there goes a lot more into just, you know, and that's what Top Gun has changed. originally in the 80s, Top Gun was based at Miramar Naval Air Station just in San Diego. After the 90s, it moved to Fallon, Nevada, and it became Top Gun and the Strike Fighter Weapons School. So they now teach them not just to dogfight, but to drop bombs, but to do all the stuff that it takes to get there. So that Act 2 is super realistic, and I agree with you guys. Having a mission that they are going to actually go and do, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, because it really does help them move the needle forward, and all the the beginning of that opening sequence where he introduces himself to the kids, it was awesome. Like he was teaching these guys that, hey, you may think that you're the biggest, you may have the biggest stick, but I'm gonna humble you a little bit, and teach you that you don't. I love the fact that they use the single seat jets and the 2-seat jets, because I think it's very important that the Navy has those guys that are dedicated to backseaters to just dropping bombs and doing the targeting pod stuff. So I thought it was really great that they incorporated that into the program. I loved the different personalities, and Darren and I had this conversation because we were kind of texting back and forth and everything, and you mentioned it kind of, Morgan, earlier in what you were saying, which was that Rooster's a very by the book guy. And who would you say out of the group was more Maverick, other than Maverick? Like, to me, it was the Hangman guy. Like, he was very much the Maverick of that particular group. And, or I guess he was more of the Maverick of that group, because he was the don't think about it, just go to the max, do what you got to do to get the mission done. And Rooster was the more Iceman than anything, because he was very cold, very by the book, that type of stuff. So I thought it was kind of cool how they switched the personalities around a little bit,
right.
And made things different. But and so, like, you could see Maverick is trying to force this growth on Rooster, and it builds that tension between them and all that stuff. So yeah. So now, sorry, I just wanted to talk about that before we went on to the third act, which the third act, I was like, it's awesome. It's spectacular. You get the Star Wars, like, it felt like the Star Wars, like, I don't know if anybody else got that, but like the trench run from the original Star Wars, where they go, like that scene where they're coming off the carrier and they get into like the attack formation, and he's there, and you could see behind him all the other 3 jets, and that's like a real scene. Like that's not CGI. Those dudes and guys and gals were in that situation, flying like that close and all that stuff. And to see them get down into that trench, all those scenes are filmed in like the Cascades up north, like Seattle or up in Washington and Oregon and stuff like that. So all the low level stuff is stuff that those guys do in real life, and that was super cool. I don't know what you guys thought about it, but I don't know, Meg, what did you?
I think honestly, like, one of the most impressive things was like how real it all was. I mean, the practical effects and the fact that the actors had to shoot most of it themselves. They had to start the camera, stop the cameras, go back, watch the the film when they got on the ground, and redo things, and then of course taking into consideration the lighting and all of that, because you're not on the ground, you're up in the air.
Yeah.
And I was watching some things earlier about how, like, the rigorous training that, Tom Cruise put all of the actors and actresses through so that they could withstand the actual G-forces and that kind of thing, and all the, the different things they had to do for training. And then they kind of got comfortable in the aircraft. And so they had to kind of, up the ante a little bit with their acting, because they were just kind of taking the turns, like, they were comfortable up there going 140 miles an hour. So I just thought that was really, really awesome to see, how real it was. And I mean, I know it's a movie, and there, you have to kind of take all of that with a grain of salt, but, when it started in with all of that, I'm thinking, okay, who's going to die? Somebody's not going to make it out of here. Is it going to be Maverick? It was really,
I
don't know.
fully
And then-
expected him not to make it out. I
Yeah,
really
me too.
didn't. Like, I fully expected him. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And when they were talking about, how coming up out of the dip or whatever, and the plane isn't designed to withstand
Right.
the G forces and all of that. I just thought that was really, really cool. And having, like I said, watched it with you guys the week before, learning all the history of the planes, because I didn't know. I'm not into planes. That's not something.
That's my nerd. That's part of my nerd.
Yes,
Right. Yeah, right.
clearly. But I benefited from that greatly.
Yeah, Darren. So that third act, with the way it culminates, as we said, this is a spoiler review. We know Maverick himself goes down. He gets shot down, and lo and behold, who comes and saves the day? Rooster comes back for him, right? Which I love that scene when Tom Cruise
that
goes
was my
running after
favorite
Rooster
scene.
because Rooster goes down, and he just pushes him, and Rooster thinks he's going to be
Shut up.
happy to see him, and he's just like, "What are you
Yeah.
thinking?" And he's like, "I wasn't. You told me not to think."
Yeah.
It was
Tell me
fantastic.
not to think.
Yeah, you told me not to think.
Yes, that was so intense. Like that comedic break with the shot, that was so great. Like it was so needed.
That was perfect. What did you think of that third act, Darren? Did it pull you out of the film at all? A little bit with the whole they're down, the helicopter's kind of chasing them, and they got to get the F-14 now, or was it no? We're still in this.
I was locked in for every second
Yeah.
of the third act, both times. In fact, it was really a different third act the second time, because the first time, man, when he shows up in his dress whites at the hard deck, I'm like, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
Right.
a bad omen. Showing up. So it was really a weird, quick change in emotion when. Once I was like, okay, they're not going to kill Mav. Once they shot him down, I was like, oh, no, that wasn't that kind of accident that you would die in. So when they showed him on the ground, I'm like, okay, he's not going to die. And I definitely didn't think they were just going to show him getting obliterated by the Apache
Right.
helicopter. So once once I saw him on the ground, I knew he was going to live. And then fan on the
Yeah, sorry, it's my computer's going crazy. So
I was like,
I don't understand it.
so then it switched to like, okay, then Mav and Rooster get to the F-14, which I don't care. What a great way to bring back the F-14
Yeah.
and pay homage to that. And so they get into the F-14, and now I'm thinking, oh no, is Rooster gonna make it? So that changed the emotion from, okay, I know Mav's not gonna die, but now maybe they actually do kill Rooster. I was like, Jesus, they're gonna kill this damn family. Can't make it out of any Top
They need
Gun
to stop flying.
movie. So the first, that was my first, time watching it, was like I was worried about someone dying, So then the second time you watch it, you know what's going to happen. So you're not having that emotion, and you actually get to like really take in the third act as a whole. And I noticed the music the second time around, and the music is phenomenal job. And the acting in that third act was incredible. Jon Hamm, when he says to send him, like I said, just one of the best moments, and just one of those like catching Mjolnir feelings, kind of feeling for me. And then I love that they gave Hangman a little bit of a, not that he needed a redemption, but it was like a payoff to
Right.
a payoff to him getting, him getting to do something, because he was the Red 5 alert, just like Mav in the first one. So he was even more like Mav than he even realized. And then there was maybe, Chekhov's gun in this was 10 G's, right? Like,
Yeah.
They don't give you that scene in the beginning just to show you that Mav is the fastest guy alive. They really hammer home the 10G thing, and so that becomes like throughout the movie, you're like, how are they going to use this 10Gs? And then you see Mav doing the run to show him how it's done, and he hits it, and it's like, oh man, that was a really cool way to pay it off, to like I guess that also happened with the kid. He couldn't take it and he passed out, and to give you a
Right.
little bit of maybe that kid's gonna die.
Right. Right.
So just freaking when when Penny and her daughter come back to the hangar at the end and that music is playing, that second time it was emotional. It was really emotional.
You got Rooster there helping with the plane.
That's when I had tears in my eyes.
Well, it was hard not to, you know, like you watch. It's a funny scene because I was like, nobody wants to see old people doing certain things together, and so that scene with Tom and with Tom and Jennifer
I'd probably
Connelly.
still watch it though.
Oh, you probably would, you know. But I'm like, okay, oh, please don't make this worse, you know. But then when the daughter comes home and she's stuffing him out the window, you know, and you're like, oh, this is a funny scene. But then she, you know, and he drops down and they're face to face, and you're like, oh, that's pretty funny. And then she looks at him, she's like, just don't break her heart again, you know. And it's like, it's stuff like that, you know. And then he just gives her that look like, yeah, you know, and so that makes it harder when he does show up in the whites, you know, after he does what he's been named mission leader, and because he may not come back, he may break her heart again, you know. But they also set up in the third act where he tells her about how he made, you know, you don't really understand why he held him back, you know, you don't really understand why he did what he did. You think it's because he's trying to protect him, and to some extent he was, but it's because you know the relationship that he has with his mom, and his mom is the one. So now he's not just protecting him, and you could see the selflessness where he's like, he already hates me, he can continue to hate me. There's no reason for him to hate her for what I, you know, for what I did. And so again, to go back to your point, Darren, you're like, oh, is this guy gonna die too? So it's like, is he gonna, you know, is Rooster gonna die, and is it gonna be, oh crap, you know, like I put this kid at risk, like everything that his mom feared is gonna come true, you know. And so I was really surprised at how emotional the movie was, because if there's a flaw in the first one, other than the Goose and Maverick relationship and then the ultimate death of Goose, that's really the only emotion that's in the movie, you know, other than just like, hell yeah, that was kick ass, you know. But
emotion.
But yeah, like there's really, but this one had a lot more. It had really great moments of humor. It had really great moments of drama, and I think it was a much more emotional story than I was expecting. At least, you know, from my perspective. So.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, what heard that too.
His mic's rubbing up against their chest or something.
Do you think this movie would be as good, or we'd still feel this good about it, if it was all CGI? Do you think those practical, them in the plane, really makes that big of a difference?
I mean, I think it would have looked as cool, but the appreciation I have for what they did is different.
Yeah, it made the movie theater going experience even better, and that was Tom's message at the beginning. I'm sure everybody got that little 2-minute blurb where everybody was like, okay, thanks, Tom, you know. But then you're walking out and you're like, damn, thank you, Tom, for doing all that you did for this movie to make that feeling of sitting there in the theater just buzzing, you know, like I don't think you get that with CGI, but it's still a damn good movie with CGI.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the amount of work that they put into, you know, they didn't just slap these cameras in the back of the jet. Like, they had to go to Boeing and they had to say, we want to put these cameras in there, and then Boeing had to figure out, they had to work together to mount those cameras in there so that in the event of some sort of catastrophic situation where they had to eject out of the jet, that the cameras wouldn't come flying off and kill anybody, you know, or if they were to go into an out. So they had to build a very robust apparatus that secured that stuff in there. had to mount cameras on the outside of the aircraft to get, certain shots. They had to do a ton of work. There was a ton of work that led into that. And so when you see these guys pulling 5, 6, 7 Gs, that's real. Like you can't fake that. You can't put that into a green screen and say, hey, I want you to pretend like you're pulling 6 times the force of gravity, meaning that if you weigh 200 pounds, you now weigh like 1,600 pounds. Like, can you make that face for me? And it's just like,
right.
How would you do that? Like how would you even? Yeah, right. Yeah. So
Is that what it looks like?
right. Yeah.
Like you're
so
melting.
How am I doing?
right. So you watch these guys and these gals, and they're like, I mean, they're really pulling these G's, and the face is being pulled down because that's really happening to them. And now think about if you're pulling those G's and you're looking back over your shoulder to see somebody who's trying to kill you, and the cool thing about the way they filmed this movie was the guy who did the liaison between the Navy and Paramount Pictures. He said, if I do this, I'm not going to actually use Top Gun instructors, which they didn't use in this one. They actually just pulled pilots from the fleet. These are regular lieutenants from Naval Air Station Fallon. So all the maneuvers that they pull are things that, that normal lieutenants learn. All the stuff that they're doing, some of it's just lower than they would normally do, and in some cases they did bring in, for the really low level stuff, where he's like 25 feet off the deck. That was a Blue Angel pilot that they brought in who had made those runs, and he made them progressively lower each time, to get to where they wanted to go. But, we talked about the test pilot scene where he does the jet over top of the, which I have a great story about Ed Harris in that. So that scene is actually filmed. So when they did it, I remember listening to a podcast back in like 2019 when they were talking about the filming of it, and they had the liaison guy come in and talk about it, and he said all the flying scenes are real. So even if there's CGI overlaid over stuff, in which case like the Dark Star aircraft is an overlay of, but that is a real Blue Angel jet that they used to film those scenes, and then they just overlaid the Dark Star CGI over top of that. So the scene where he's coming over top off the runway and he lifts up right above that guard shack, that scene is real, and that scene was filmed with a real jet, and Ed Harris is really standing there, and he took the brunt of that jet blast, and he never moved a muscle. And the dude that was like, I had like a ton of respect for the guy before that because he was super cool. But when he did that, I was like, holy smokes, this,
right.
And like the shack, you see the roof lift up. That is not a visual effect. The roof of that shack really came up off the ground. And the only thing that kept it from flying off was the electrical lines that they had run from the base up into the lights that were in the ceiling of it. But other than that, everything was real. So I think, to me, that made the movie so much better was the realistic practical effects. And I think we talked about it in the rundown a little bit about the orcs show that's going to be about the orcs in the new Lord of the Rings show that they're doing and how they're really doing the practical effects. I hope that this shows Hollywood that they need character driven stories, emotional stories with practical effects, and people will go see that stuff. And I think we've seen it with the Furiosa stuff. Those are all practical things. Like, you can use CGI, but you don't need to use it as a crutch. And you can tell great stories with just a light touch of CGI. And to me, that's what made the movie at the end of the day. Like, all the other stuff is super cool, but watching, especially on the IMAX, when you're sitting there and you're watching the plane behind them as they're making these turns, and you can see the vapor coming off the wings, because they're pulling so many G's. You can see that. That's not CGI. That's real, and they're really being pushed down into those seats. And man, what's the line from the first one where he's like, he's like, this gives me a hard on, you know, and then like I watched that and I think maybe that's the part, Darren, where I get the, you know, you got the Jon Hamm part, and for me it was the just pulling G's with the real stuff, but it was cool.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And the cast, how do we feel about this? They're not really a Top Gun class, right? Because they're past that point.
They're all graduates.
Yeah,
at this point, they're all graduates of Top Gun. Yeah.
I felt like the cast, I thought they all interacted really well. Like, each character was great. They all played them well. I mean, everybody in it I thought was phenomenal. I don't think there was a single person in there that I was just like, why is this person even in here? Like, I don't even want to do it. Even Bob.
I love Bob.
I love
Bob. Was great.
Bob
right?
was the best.
He's so adorable.
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah. The whole time, just sitting there.
That's so good. and that's
so good.
He's played by Lewis Pullman, who's Bill Pullman, who
Bill Pullman,
who will forever be known as the greatest president of the United States.
Absolutely.
You know, so
saved the world.
He saved the world. Yeah. So.
That's great.
United the world.
But you see it. You can see it in his face.
And it was a damn good pilot himself.
Yeah, he was.
Which he was.
Which
he was. And still don't think they would.
What did you think of Phoenix? Like, I loved her. I thought she was really great. I thought her chemistry with Rooster was really good. You know, she gives him the love tap with the pool cue at that one point, you know, and I was like, oh yeah.
That would have hurt, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think we had talked about it a bit a few weeks ago, like how they didn't make a big deal about it, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal that she's there, you know, because she's a woman and she's up there in a pretty male-dominated field, but they didn't make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
And I really did like how they did that with her.
Yeah, totally. She had maybe the cheesiest line in the whole movie, which we all saw in the trailer, so it wasn't like anything in the movie that took me out of the movie. But yeah, she actually grew on me throughout the movie. She had a great line to Hangman about, like, as long as you don't call me one first or something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's a good comeback there.
Right.
Yeah, and then she's like, he's like, where were you, Phoenix? She goes, come help me out, Phoenix. And she's like, I'm dead, dude.
Yeah, dead asshole or something like that.
You know, like, asshole.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she was great.
I remember you talking about that line from the trailer and how you're like, she seemed kind of cocky when she said it, but when it was in the context of the movie, it came across like who could they possibly bring in to teach us what, you know, who's going to teach us anything at this point? So it didn't really come across as cocky in the movie. It came across as more like, holy crap, who's it going to be?
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Well, yeah, because they do set it up where she's like, it's like, this is the all-stars. Like, she's like, there's so-and-so Omaha, and there's Yale, and there's like all, like, these are all the best fighter pilots in the Navy. Like, you know, really, who is going to teach us anything? So again, I had said it before. I was like, no fighter pilot would ever really say that, but you're right. You know, and it's a movie. It's not a documentary. I have to always remember that it's a movie, not a documentary. And yeah. So I love
Iceman in his computer typing up, you know, what to say.
I loved it. Yeah. I loved the Hangman character because I kind of alluded to it earlier that he is very much the Maverick of the group, because, you know, in one of the scenes where she even says, because he takes off, you know, like they're there together. He's her wingman, and he takes off and goes and does. And who do we know that did that in the first movie? You know, and it was, you know, it's the Maverick. That's the Maverick thing to do. You know, so you got this other Maverick guy that kind of comes in, but you're kind of seeing it from a different perspective. I love the Hangman character. He was great as a pseudo villain, if you will, or at least an wouldn't say villain.
Right,
he was an antagonist, you know, to the situation, and I love how he pushed Rooster's.
You see him as like the Iceman character.
To some extent, he's like a combination of Maverick and Iceman together in one. in the way this kind of plays out. So
It's a good amalgamation of it.
yeah, and so but Glenn Powell, like he played it really well. Like you disliked him until the very end, and then even in the end, he's still really cocky and arrogant. It's just like that's like, all right. Well, now he has 2 kills. It's like, but what did you think about?
Still one less than Mav in his F14.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I know Darren, you had mentioned kind of getting a thing for Jon Hamm, but there were a couple other guys. Warlock was his like number 2, so he was the strike fighter weapon school guy. And then you also had Hondo, who was kind of Maverick's kind of right hand man, out there.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you think of those guys? Because I thought they did a really great job of kind of moving the story along in different places, and I thought they were cast really, really well. I really loved the Warlock guy because he had a lot of like really great, I'm trying to help you, Maverick. Don't screw yourself. Stop being Maverick.
Right. Yeah. I thought that it was really interesting that they could have made the Warlock character somebody from the original, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to make it a crutch.
Right.
They needed to have somebody else in the Navy respect this guy and want him to win.
Right.
And so I thought that was really smarter than for that character. And then I love the Hondo character because with the purpose of the Hondo character is to show you that Maverick is a good leader and people will follow him.
Right.
And Hondo follows him everywhere and cares about him. And so it shows that Mav can be a good leader. And that will come out and people will find a way to follow him. So the purpose of those 2 characters worked. Like everything else in this movie for me worked. Like there was no wasted character in this movie.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like, is there a character who you're like, I don't really get why this person's getting the screen time?
Yeah.
So there was no producer's kid getting the screen time.
Right.
Yeah.
And
even the Ed Harris, the beginning of the movie with Ed Harris, he sets it up as, hey, look, you're a dinosaur. Like if I have, I love that they referred to him as the Drone Ranger. I thought it was a really quick line, where they call him the Drone Ranger, because I mean that's the fear that everybody has is that that is the Super Hornet or is the F-35 the last aircraft where we put a man or a woman in the box, and that's another theme that goes through the movie is that it comes to the end of the day that it's not the aircraft. It's not the weapon system. It's the guy in the box or the guy or the gal in the box that makes the difference, and they can win or lose a situation just, based off that. But I love the Ed Harris character because he does put that pressure on Maverick. It's like, hey, you may have won this situation, but you're a dying beast, and his line at the end of that scene is maybe so, sir, but not today, and I thought that was great.
Awesome.
Awesome. But I think Meg, maybe because you're kind of newer to the franchise, I guess maybe than the rest of us. What about how they handled Val Kilmer's throat cancer, and how that played for you in the movie? Like how did that work?
I think they did it really well. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted him to kind of last. I wanted that bond with Maverick to be not better in the sense because it was a good bond. You could see the strength of connection that they had. But I wanted it to continue. I didn't want it to end the way that it did. But I thought it was really, really tastefully done and accurate. You know what I mean? Because it could have wound up that way for Val Kilmer in real life.
Yeah.
So I thought the way they did that was great. Heart-wrenching. And, I didn't like it, not because it wasn't good, but just because it wasn't what I wanted. You know,
Ended on a great line. Ended on a great line.
Yeah.
What a great way to it's the all-time rivalry. That rivalry never dies, even though they love and respect each other. That rivalry is still going a little bit. who's the best.
Oh yeah, that was
around.
great.
Yeah.
Just
That was
looking to
great.
see who's the best, you know?
Was it they? They asked us, let's not end this on a bad note or something. Let's
Yeah,
say,
Yeah, this is a good
Yeah.
moment.
This is a good moment. Let's not ruin it.
yeah, let's not ruin it.
Well,
Yeah, they did that
I thought they played, and I think Darren and I talked about this before. I like that they didn't shy away from the cancer. Like Val Kilmer in real life had throat cancer, and so he can't speak any longer, and so instead of going away from that, they embraced it and used it as part of the character, and they used text messaging, which you very rarely ever see in movies anyhow. Like that, I mean, it's very. You just very rarely see that stuff happen, and so
Right.
Want to talk about work?
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
They even point to it. They literally point
right,
to it.
yeah,
Right.
I was talking about work, yeah, right. So I thought that was great too, and I think you're right, Meg. You didn't want that to end that way, but I think it kind of gives Maverick. It helps develop the Maverick character a little more,
Right.
and
Helps push him.
yeah, it helps kind of push him, I think, and make him have to stand on his own 2 feet, knowing that he doesn't have that backup that he's had, through.
Yeah, I had a very sinking feeling when his character passed away, and I was like, oh my God, Maverick's screwed. Like, he has
Yeah.
nobody now, and we needed Iceman in that position that he was in to explain, why Maverick has been who he is his entire career and hasn't advanced, but is
Right.
still in the military.
But still has a job, yeah, right, yeah.
Because if he didn't have him, always looking out for him, he'd be in a lot bigger trouble. So when he no longer had that person, I thought, yeah, he's totally screwed now. He's got nobody as a backup anymore. So I had that
Lost his
kind of
guardian
sinking
angel.
feeling. Yeah.
Right.
Lost his guardian angel.
He kept saving him. And Jon Hamm was really kind of like the bad guy in this almost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Jon Hamm was just dying to get rid of Tom Cruise or Maverick.
Was.
Sorry, dying to get rid of him. But let's kind of move into the last couple things here. We kind of touched on the cinematography and the crew and the directing, writing, and music, but let's kind of, lump it in there. I want to go to you, Megan, just because I think you're kind of with me. You're not so much of like oh God, the music. I just need to hear the music, and as Eric and Darren are. So, when you walked away from this film, kind of all that the crew, the cinematography, kind of wrapping that all up.
Shit's awesome.
Were you like, yeah, I need to go listen to this soundtrack? Were you like, I need to look up like, oh, how did they do this? How did they get that lighting and that filming? Or were you just like, that was a great movie?
Yeah, I mean, I came out of it just, that was a great movie. And then leading up to this, specifically, like sitting at this podcast talking about this, I wanted to know more about, what the actors went through, because sometimes you think, oh, it's just an actor, it's a cush job, you just get in front of a camera and do whatever. But this was legit. Like, this was, top grade military type style training. There was one thing that I saw on YouTube where they were underwater, and that I'm out. I'm totally out. That's not a major fear of mine. I do not want to be trapped underwater. No, thank you. So I just have an immense amount of respect for the actors and actresses that went through this and put everything they had into making this, because it shows, it comes across. But yeah, that's where I was. I didn't go out and buy the soundtrack or research too much of it, but when I did,
it's free
come
on
across
Spotify, Meg. It's okay,
It's
Yeah.
I can look it up, I guess.
It's free on YouTube too. Just so you know.
Yeah, I'll admit, I've been listening to that opening like pretty much every day now, just to hear that music again. And it's not even new music, it's just to hear that, and then I'll make sure to play Danger Zone right after.
The music when they're flying, in that third act, when you guys go back and watch it again, listen to that music when they're like flying over the water and the missiles are coming behind him and then they surpass him. The music it was making my heart pound, and they built so much tension with that music, and it set the tone for the entire third act. and just the music with how they replicated it, like you said in the beginning, more almost scene for scene, but the music was definitely scene for scene. And that bell, I never realized how much I knew I loved it, but how much I really loved the bell in the theme. From the moment we got the first teaser, like what feels like
right
17 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we first got that teaser, that bell was added into the score more this time around, and it was like
I did notice that
they'd make a turn with their playing, it'd be like boom,
Yeah.
It was really cool how they incorporated that into the music.
So when when they made the movie, obviously they were going to release it in 2020. So they had like all the toys like already ready to go, and they released the toys in 2020, and so we ended up getting, I think, Jackson.
Man, I want to get back into toys so bad.
I got Jackson the Matchbox set with like a couple of the jets from back in 2020, and so and then he also got this little aircraft carrier. I mean, I say little, but it's like it's probably like that long. It's probably like 2.5 feet long or whatever. And so he's got this little aircraft carrier. And when you watch the rundown, you'll understand from the nerd box question that we got, how you were influenced, like who is the biggest nerd in your life or whatever. But I walk out into the garage.
Awesome guy submitted that question.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool guy. I walk out into the garage the other day, and my son's got his tablet out there. He's playing with his aircraft carrier, and he's got his airplanes on there, and he's listening to the Top Gun Maverick soundtrack, and he's got the original that theme song going, with the bell, and then it goes straight into Danger Zone, and he's like, to the jets, and I like stood there for a half a second, and I was like, I am so proud, like in this moment, like I am so proud of my kid, because I'm like, gosh, he just loves that stuff, And he's like listening to movie soundtracks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've created like myself in, and stuff. But the music was really great. The Dark Star scene at the very beginning when he's flying that jet, like the music in that scene, the build up to it, the slow build up to that was super cool. I know I'm going to catch some flack for this because I know the Berlin song is like, I know Darren and I have already kind of had a row about this, but I feel that the Lady Gaga song is better than the Berlin Take My Breath Away song. Like I love this song, like by Lady Gaga. I just think it's a better tune, and like I'll tell you, like I've heard that the Berlin people don't even like that song, like they got so tired of it.
What do they know? Okay, what do they know?
They're clearly wrong.
Yeah, right. I know it takes some flack, but I thought the Lady Gaga song at the end was really spectacular. The video from it is super cool. I mean, I haven't watched a music video in decades, and
seriously,
it's really well done, and they even have Tom Cruise's P-51 makes an appearance in it, and the way they have her set up, they've got her out in this old abandoned airfield, and they've got a big piano, and then they've got a parachute hooked to like where the piano is, and like the wind is blowing, and it's a really phenomenal like video.
It really blows your skirt up.
It really does. So, and then the Mustang comes flying by, and nothing sounds like a P-51. That's just one of the greatest sounds in the world. So, but yeah, and
great music.
And then kind of going back to the cinematography, we want to talk about like how that was shot. Joseph Kosinski, the stuff that he did, the first movie he and Tom Cruise did together was Oblivion. And if you haven't watched it, watch it.
Go watch it.
It is spectacular. Like it is super, super cool looking. And I think it gets better. Tom Cruise does sci-fi really, really, really well, like really well. But that's just a spectacular movie, and it's beautifully shot, and a lot of practical. Despite the fact that it's in the future and all that stuff, there's a tremendous amount of practical effects in that one as well.
Right.
Like the motorcycle and stuff that he's on is all real and stuff. So Kaczynski has a gorgeous eye for filmmaking, and he is going to be he's going to continue to put out some just beautiful stuff. And hat tip to him, they did just a tremendous job with this movie and the way they shot it. We've already talked about the cockpit stuff, but where they chose to shoot, like I said, in the Cascades, out in the desert in Fallon, Nevada, and then off the boat. The stuff off the boat was super cool. I just loved that they left that opening sequence pretty much the same and just kind of updated it a little bit.
I like that it didn't really tie into the movie, because you felt like in the first one it ties into that
a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Set of scenes with Cougar, so it feels like it ties into that. But it was just a cool
I think the thing I like about it is that it's a reminder that no matter what day of the year it is, there are men and women who are out there right now 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There's an aircraft carrier somewhere in the world that's deployed, and there are Americans doing that job right now, and no matter, and so you have to think about that. That usually, they say usually the first thing that the president asks whenever there's a crisis situation somewhere is, where's the closest carrier? And because they're the ones who are going to get sent there right away to make sure that all they're doing is just giving whoever is trying to do bad stuff pause. I can deliver 60 strike fighters to your front doorstep within about 24 to 48 hours if you don't behave and do what we want you to do. So I think that's the real message from that beginning part, is that yes, this stuff is happening back home, but these guys are out there on the front lines right now, and doing that stuff.
That was you kind of stole my thunder a little bit on that, because my father. No, it's not like you knew. My father. Actually, I was going to close with my father-in-law was one of those guys on the aircraft carrier back in the '60s, and the second time I watched this movie, I watched it with my wife and sister-in-law, and their father, Jon.
Great man, by the way.
Erickson, one of the greatest men of all time. For
sure.
I might get a little emotional talking about it, but he was one of those guys, and he was one of those guys. So it's just really emotional watching it with my wife and her sister, and they thought about him the entire movie. And he loved the Navy. He loved the Navy. Him and I'd go back and forth on who's better, and of course it's the Army. But much love and respect to Jon Erickson for being one of those guys.
Great man.
Even back in the '60s. So love him.
He's very much missed. Jon's very much missed. He was a great man.
So I'll transition you here more to the last bit.
Yeah.
Rating this movie. I think I've got a new movie in my at minimum my top 10 movie of all time, because I've never walked out of a movie feeling like that, and I've walked out of Avengers Endgame on opening night, and all the other Captain America movies, but it's up there in the 9, 8, 9, 9 region for me, which puts it near Empire Strikes Back and Back to the Future. Not saying it's those movies, but I'm saying I think it's up there in my top 10, and with many, which will be many more viewings, as is the original Top Gun, one of those movies that you can just throw on in the background and watch it anytime. It's going to be one of those movies forever for me, and that's saying something. Like when it becomes an annual movie, that's when it's in my top 10.
Agreed. I mean, this is easily a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Like you said, I just felt good walking out of that, and this is definitely in my top 10. I don't know where yet, but it's in there. This year's
Yeah.
not over yet. There's still some big things coming.
I'm talking top 10 in my life. By the way,
That's
not of the year.
pretty
It's
big.
definitely the best movie of the year. Thor: Love and Thunder
Wow.
looks like it may give it some run, but I don't see it being better. This movie is up there as like an all-timer for me.
I was a little
Yeah.
worried going into it because you guys had hyped it up a lot. And I was like, I don't know if this is really going to live up to my expectations. And it totally did. You know, I need to see it again before I give it a final, like, you know, score. But it's definitely, at this point in my mind, like an 8.5. I need to see it again. If I can swing it this week, maybe I'll see it on IMAX if I can while the kids are at school. God willing, they're healthy this week.
Do it.
Selfishly, I want them to be healthy. So
Do
we'll
it.
see.
Eric, I'm assuming you hated it.
Worst movie ever.
Worst.
So there's a movie. It's a total like campy movie, but it's called This Is Spinal Tap, and it's about like
yeah.
a 80s rock band. And so one of the best lines from the movie is that they're talking about the amp, and he goes, it goes from 0 to 10, and he goes, well, can you make like 10 just a little bit louder? And he goes, you mean like it just goes to an 11? You know, like it goes to 11. And so I'm like, okay, I've got this as a 10 for me. I really do. And I agree with Darren. It'll fit into an annual watch for me. I think not just because I watched Top Gun with my dad and my brother. The original Top Gun in 1986. I watched it with my dad and my brother at the theater. And I took my dad to see this one. And my brother, my brother flew down from Massachusetts. I flew in from Colorado, and we took my dad to see this at the IMAX because I wanted to see this one with my dad. You know, I wanted to have that emotional bond with him. And then as soon as I got home, I took my wife and my 2 kids to see it as well because I wanted my son and my daughter to have that bond with me that, you know, we could always watch Top Gun Maverick together. Like we always had that, you know, like they've seen the original Top Gun and all that, but now we have that together. And so they know how much aviation means to me, and they know how much, you know, Top Gun means to me. And so now we have that memory together as well. And so, so I'll definitely put it in a 10. If it goes to 11, I put it on put it on 11. But I think the final thing that I'll say is, like, whenever everybody comes over to the theater, like to my house, and I do a demo for the theater, it's always been the original Top Gun is what I usually will throw on to demo the theater. And there's going to be a new movie that gets added into the rotation for that, you know? Yeah. So it's usually Top Gun, Lone Survivor, Active Valor, and, you know, those are usually the 3 that I'll put in, and just because they all sound so spectacular.
Right.
But we may be adding a second Top Gun into this for sure. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Sounds like we all loved it. Which, if you've been listening, it should be no surprise. But
Yeah.
with that, this has been fun. I'm glad we got to review this movie finally. I know we've been dying to do it, and I hope everybody out there, you know, enjoyed it, and leave a comment. Did you like it? Did you hate it? It's all right if you hated it. You know, we're not going to disown you. I'll be shocked.
I'll just block you, but it's fine.
Yeah,
you know.
I'll just.
You.
We don't need you. No,
Never submit. Don't ever submit.
Don't ever submit a question. Don't ever comment again. No, we'd love to hear it. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. We appreciate you tuning in. And with that being said, we're out of here.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I gotta come over with a goodbye. I'm not usually here. Avalanche, Stanley Cup champions.